I certainly can shed some light on what it means to be incarcerated, not just for the individuals that's incarcerated inside, but for their families and for our community at large. You know, I've been incarcerated in my life. I got about 15 years as an adult in federal and state prison that I had to suffer through. So that experience comes firsthand. Not including, you know, my juvenile detention time as a young person. And when you look at the environment that many of us grew up in, many of the people that I was incarcerated with come from similar backgrounds. Usually they're predominantly black or people of color. Most people are poor, are struggling check to check in some other way, and they're heavily policed. And there's a serious lack of investment there. So prison becomes almost a natural outcome. I'm sure your viewers and yourself have heard of school to prison pipeline. And what that means, taking it out of that, you know, just the phrasing of it, is the structure of our schools, the lack of real care, the lack of actual guidance, the fear from many of the teachers, and the actual structure of the school system itself in certain districts recreate the conditions that many of us face when we're finally incarcerated. So the outcomes are predictable. Starting with just the first day of prison and thinking about what that means for a person, and I won't live long in this part of the conversation. I think there's a lot more to talk about than just what that experience is. But it's important for us to highlight the fact that your first time in prison, your first time incarcerated, there is a process in which your identity is completely stripped, right? From the shaving of your head to the removal of your clothes, the clothes that you would typically wear in the free world, the direct orders that are given to you that are met with violence, you know, if you're not behaving accordingly, the introduction or forced introduction of peoples and places that you're not familiar with and you don't know, they're all strangers to you, and the sort of forced commingling of such. And the diet changes and all of that is a way that your identity is completely stripped away from you, and control is more easily set against you, right? When you're no longer a person in the way that you believed yourself to be, you're more easily controlled. That is a hallmark of the carceral system. That exists on your first day and in every day of your incarceration. We adapt as we go along, and it's important that we do so. But some of us never adapt to a place where they get stronger. They end up just being completely conformed by the system. And that goes for the people that are incarcerated, including the people that actually work there. It's the entire culture that envelops you and structures you, informs you to be obedient and to feel lesser than. So I'll stop there in talking about the initial beginnings of being incarcerated and then what that experience is writ large. I want to touch on a couple of more current topics, which is one of the reasons I think this conversation is so important. Right now in New York State, in the country, but I'll start with New York State, we just witnessed a man be beat to death on December 9th, pronounced dead on December 10th, and that's a brother named Robert Brooks. We watched that video. It was broadcast all over the state, all over the country, and other parts of the world. We watched that video and were as appalled as anybody can be at watching somebody who's got the handcuffs behind their back, completely helpless and harmless. Not just helpless, but harmless in that situation, surrounded by 14 plus security staff, being beaten in that way. And we watched that video and we were appalled. And the leaders of our country, the leaders of our state, Governor Hochul, came out and outraged in her voice said they need to immediately be fired. They needed to immediately be fired, not jailed, not prosecuted, nothing. They just they need to be immediately fired. That speaks volumes about how much they care about us, right? That speaks volumes when you think about what that would mean if it was a a group of black men surrounding some white, person and doing the same exact things. But we keep having these same conversations. That happened with Trayvon. We knew that if Trayvon Martin was a white kid and the person that killed him was black, it'd be a very different outcome. Same thing in January 6th when they stormed the Capitol. We knew that if there was black people storming the Capitol versus white people storming the Capitol, it would have been a very different outcome. And I think that message was loud and clear for a lot of people, and people came out. People have been rallying and protesting ever since. We just now, more than 2 months later, see those officers being indicted and prosecuted for what they did for the brutal murder of Robert Brooks. So we see 9 officers right now charged with everything from murder to manslaughter. But it shouldn't just stop there. I'm not here advocating for a justice system that ain't never did nothing for me or my community. But what I am advocating for is awareness and direct change to the situations that create these environments where people think that this is okay. At the same time, Governor Hochul came out and said what she said about we need to be fired immediately, and we were all appalled. There was many of us that have experience that knew that wasn't anything really new. It don't always end in death, right? If people don't always get beaten like that and end in death, I've been beaten like that, cuffed and thrown into the box, right? Segregated housing unit, for y'all don't know what that means, the box, right? The isolation. And I know plenty of brothers that have, so we all knew that this is something that's culture-wide throughout the state system, throughout all prison systems, I would say, in the United States of America. And we were advocating not just for those folks to be prosecuted, but for the culture and the system to change in a way that materially impacts that from that happening and protects people from it ever happening again, and actually does something that benefits folks. Now, whether we get it or not is another question, because it's another topic I would like to get into. But I feel like we could be here all day. There's so many different tendrils, to this conversation and where I could go. But I'll stick with where we're at right now, and thinking about Governor Hochul's response about getting them fired versus actually calling for their prosecution and arrest. The response from the community coming out, rallying and protesting, coming from all over the state, mind you, right? And showing up to have their voice heard. First press conference rally was at the governor's mansion here in Albany, right? Me and my organization led that with Jamaica Miles and all of us Community Action Group, in connection with several other organizations as well. We Are Revolutionary, Saratoga BLM, Center for Community Alternatives, and more. And we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop there. We had press conferences, rallies in New York City. We had it in the Capital Region. There's been in Rochester. They've been in Buffalo, and they continue to move on. They push pressure on the district attorney, Fitzpatrick, who's the special prosecutor for those that ain't really paying attention to what's going on right now. Put pressure on him to actually bring these charges, and now they're finally here. So now the question is, what's next? What's next? What do we do? What's the solution? They're getting prosecuted now. They're going to face their time. They're going to face their jury. They're going to face that judge. What do we do now? And before we could even answer that question, the correctional officers from across our state decided that they had an answer. They was going to go on strike. They was going to walk out of the prisons. If we're not happy with what's happening in prisons, then they're going to walk out. Now it's unsanctioned strike. The union didn't sanction this strike. They walked out on their own. They're calling it the Wildcat strike. They walked out on their own. Right now it's 30 plus prisons that correctional officers walked out and are protesting out in front and refusing to go back to work until their demands are met. There's been some effort on their part to separate these strikes from what happened with Robert Brooks and the indictment that came down against their fellow officers. I think you'd be a fool to imagine that this strike would have happened without, what happened with Robert Brooks and the angst in society around what's happening in New York prisons and the potential changes that would happen moving forward because of what happened with Robert Brooks. In addition to that, I don't want to go on a tangent too much. There's also a lot of brothers that have died under suspicious circumstances over the last decade, at least, right? That we believe that this is a kind of a red herring to distract from potential wider investigations. Now, the district attorney, as the special prosecutor, was asked this very same question at the press conference after the indictment. He said that we looked at that and we didn't see anything that would allow us to prosecute further than today. But there's people pushing for a much broader investigation into other people that have died and whose families' voices have gone unheard and unresolved in figuring out what happened to their family. So we have the strike. They're out there in the community. They're not going back in. Governor Hochul has called in the National Guard to fill out those roles in state prisons right now until this strike can end. She's already made concessions through the commissioner, Department of Corrections Commissioner, Dan Monticello, that they would change some of the provisions of something called the HALT Act. HALT Act is simply the humane alternatives to long-term confinement. Basically meaning they can't just throw you in a box for years like they used to. The reason why the HALT Act was even enacted is because of all the data produced around the impacts of being incarcerated and thrown in a box for years at a time. It created a mental health crisis in so many people. It doesn't do anything to protect anyone per se, because as soon as that person comes out the box, they're more violent, they're more paranoid, they're more unsafe than what they were when they went in, and they want to find ways to address that mental health crisis that was happening, and that's where HALT comes in. So that's one of the demands they have, and that was a concession given by the governor, and everybody's a little pissed off about that. Me, personally, I'm not happy about that. But they ain't just asked for the end of the HALT Act. They asked for more money for their jobs. They just got a $10,000 bonus last year, across the board, right? And now they just asked for even more money to do the same work. They complain about the hours. They complain about how they're treated by the administration. They're not respected. They're not really cared for. And I find it interesting that the same people that are the tip of the spear in brutality for people that are incarcerated, that are the tip of the spear for racism and abuse and just straight power and control over other individuals are making demands about how they're feeling not respected and not treated well. Same ones that don't have any respect for human beings, right, that they are charged with the care and custody for, are claiming they don't feel respected in their roles as officers, even though they get to go home every day and they're not subject to the same brutality that they often dish out. So that's kind of where we sit right now. In these last couple of months, Robert Brooks was murdered. There was an outcry for the indictment and prosecution of the correctional officers. Correctional officers responded, not the ones that were charged, but the brotherhood, sisterhood of correctional officers responded by walking off the job. Governor Hochul has been ineffectual up to this point. Community is hopping foot to foot, figuring out which way to go and how to get the changes that they want. And all the while this is happening, when those correctional officers walk out, our families, our brothers, our sisters that are inside facing, mostly it's in men's prisons, but I say my sisters because my sisters are dealing with their own, in the prison, dealing with their own pain as well. But people have died in prison right now as a result of lack of care, right? That you can directly tie to the unstaffing of the prisons, right? You got people calling for sick call, 10 o'clock at night. I'm not going to say this brother's name, so I know I have permission to. He's deceased at this point. Calling for sick call at night and then being found dead, being found unresponsive in the morning and then pronounced dead later on, right? Now, this is a direct result of not having staff on to make sure that that person's medical needs were met. I know of another individual, and thank God he's not deceased, but that hung up in Coxsackie Correctional Facility, right? It's only 2 people walking a tier, 1 security officer, 1 regular staff, 150 people on the tier. They're removing garbage because they ain't opening the cells like that, taking out garbage and all of that and handing out food or whatever, and walk by and there's a guy swinging in a cell. And they were able to get him down before he was deceased, but he'll suffer medical issues behind that moving forward, right? So this is the crisis right now that's happening in New York State, and this is the crisis that I'm committed to, with my organization and all the men, women that really care about this type of issue, committed to standing up and doing what I can to resolve and change it for the better. It's a work that's exhausting, obviously, for many people, because it's the human quality, man. It's that thing that's sacred, that's gone on being neglected, and it starts in the heart of our communities and people that look like us. And I wanna. There's so much more I could say about that particular situation, but I wanna switch gears just a little bit on that point that I just was talking about, that human quality, the sacred humanness of our community, right? That has gone on neglected for generations. And we are now currently sitting in what I would think is an existential crisis in society. Black people have always faced some existential crisis in this country. But I feel it now in this lifetime more than I think I've ever felt it, even through my incarceration. Because we're seeing the very safeguards, right, that were fought for and people died for in the civil rights era being undone by the current federal administration. I'm talking about Trump and all his cronies. And we're not even, I think we're a full month into his presidency, and we've seen any number of changes that, would scare any rational thinking person in the United States. And when you're thinking about what it means to be falling under a fascist regime. And at the same time, people are losing jobs. He's attempting to dismantle the social services to help people navigate that time when they lose jobs and transition into working and maintaining a home and all of that. And if that's for people more broadly, if that's impacting people more broadly across the country, it's going to impact our communities some of the worst, because we already fall at the lowest, at the lowest bar when it comes to economic success, etc. Like home ownership. Wealth across the board, like we fall in these lower categories, and putting more people in this kind of grinder, right, is going to put our people in even worse situation. And we've been seeing it year after year after year after year. And I think the one I wanted to segue to when I talk about solutions, no matter what I come up with a solution, bro, if we ain't got the people, we ain't going nowhere. If the people ain't turning up and turning out and standing on business, we ain't going nowhere. That's why we end up in a situation where it's everybody for themselves, right? Everybody running for the gate. You know what I mean? And if you get left behind, well, that's on you. I'm out. I got to take care of my business. We don't move collectively. And I'm not saying any or all people move collectively in the same sense. So I think that's also one of the things that gets us behind. We believe in this, this fantasy world where everybody agrees and everybody's a like mind and everybody moves. No people is like that anywhere. That's not what I'm saying. But we got to get to a place where we recognize that we better off together than we is apart. And you got people that are actively looking to destroy who you are, your identity, in your world, especially through education, through financing, through all these different means that we're seeing come out of this administration, and things that have already existed, but now is on steroids under this administration, are more blatant under this administration. And I think it's an opportunity as much of a problem Trump is, he's also an opportunity to have a clear and direct enemy in mind against who you are and your identity and what you do as a people. And so it's an opportunity for people to galvanize around changing some of the things that are happening, or at least standing as a collective force to address it. We grow frustrated. I grow frustrated. Let me speak for myself. I grow frustrated, man, sitting back and thinking about all the boots on the ground efforts and work that happens to no end, right? To no clear end result. Because you got, and I'm not blaming the people. I'm just asking the people to stand up. Because you got generations of time where people have never had the opportunity, man. They never saw the city give a damn about them. The state give a damn about them. The county or the feds really give a damn about them. And always look at them through a crooked lens. So I get it. I get where it's coming from. It's muscle memory at this point. So no matter what the face look like, it could be me, one of the brothers that grew up here in this community, or not. You know what I mean? And they take it with a grain of salt and they keep it pushing because they got an entire history of being left out, neglected and ignored, or being penalized for something, right? So I feel like I can understand that, but at the same time, if we don't wake up and shake out, it only gonna get worse. So what you gonna do, right? What you gonna do? You gonna fight, you gonna run, or you gonna go tuck tail, put your head in the sand? I would hope that people decide to fight. And that's what I'm all about, and that's why I do this work. I give a damn. I understand that the work I'm doing ain't just about helping one brother, or two brothers, or a neighborhood. The impact that we have has a ripple effect across our entire community. It's a ripple effect that impacts my kids and my grandkids, right? It has an impact, and it impacts all of our families and all our kids. And it's the only way forward is the collective work. It's about all of us, not one of us.
We seen what happened to Robert Brooks, right? What's some of the daily violations that happen every day that's a violation of human rights and just a violation, period, that they don't talk about on a day-to-day basis?
Let me put it to you this way. And I think most of my brothers that have been incarcerated would understand where I'm coming from when I say all this, right? On a day-to-day basis, there's messaging, right, that we all get from being incarcerated, whether it's from the people we're incarcerated with, people that are security staff, meaning the COs, the administration, the medical team, all of that. And I don't mean direct messaging like this is what they're saying to you, although that does happen. But you understand in a very clear way, like being in those greens and being in prison, I don't give a damn who you are, you don't matter here, right? You get it, for, like I said, on your daily. You get up, you go to chow, you stand in the line, you walk in. There's the messaging in that is that you don't matter here. In the education building, how the volunteers, the people that are contracted to be in there, whatever, how they treat you, even when they really kind to you at certain points, right? If you run afoul of them in any way or disagree with them too much, you'll learn very quickly you don't matter here. You want to get medical, you want to get yourself taken care of, you want your teeth fixed, or you want your heart palpitations, or you're sweating, or you're in pain, or you hurt yourself. You'll learn very quickly in that medical staff that you don't matter here, right? If you got a grievance with the correctional officers, or something's happened that's a violation, or you couldn't get on the phone, or they denied your visit, and your people didn't travel 8 hours, you learn very quickly that you don't matter here. And that plays on your mind, bro. That plays on your mind, and people leave those places and come back home, right? Feeling completely deep. I don't care what they tell you. I don't care how they show up with their chests all out and they looking all muscle, whatever the hell they can. They've been beaten down mentally the whole time they was there. And the way they try to find relief in that sometimes is maybe they beat up other people, right? Maybe they play sports. Maybe they try to, whatever they could to escape that feeling. Gamble too much, watch some silly ass shit on TV, or whatever the case may be. That feeling is real. And they come home knowing they've been beaten down mentally, right? And I think that does so much more to perpetuate the shit we see in our communities, like from all levels of it, from the cycle of poverty to the cycle of violence, right? To the cycle of childless children. I mean, fatherless or parentless children, right? You see that on steroids, and I think a lot of it, because it happens there, the microcosm is very up in your face, right? It's very much right in front of you. But writ large, if you're talking about the society at large, that some of that messaging is similar, right? So to me, yes, the beatdowns are horrible, and then people die from the beatdowns, and that shouldn't happen. But that's the other aspect of it is how much you're devalued every day, right? And you're mentally beat down, and you show up with that shit out here in the community, unresolved, further traumatized, and that shit just leaked out in all these different ways, and people trying to chase down fantasies because they're trying to escape something. You dig? Trying to escape that feeling, trying to find value in a chain or a car or a woman or whatever the fuck, as opposed to understanding who they are. And I think they stripped our identity from us, and they stripped our history. All that stuff to me is connected, brother. So those are other ways people get, you know what I'm saying? That's another aspect of brutality that happens in prison that's not really talked about. Now, I could talk about somebody getting slapped upside the head. I could talk about someone being, balked at or screamed down. I could talk about being put up on the wall for no reason, meaning putting your hands up on the wall, getting called out of line and telling you to, you know what I mean, where they just looking for you to do anything, right? Making motherfuckers do dumb shit like stand on one leg. You understand what I'm saying? And waiting for you to buck so they can fuck you up on the spot. You dig? Right? And I can, all of that shit is real. Violence. But it's that mental, man, and that spiritual bankruptcy that ends up happening that has the more long-lasting effects. Because they was just beating our ass, but wasn't doing all that type of shit, and we knew who we were. At least we know how to fight back. You dig?
I want you to talk to like the single mothers out there, right, that's raising black men, that don't know what to do. When they see they young boys going down the path, what's the solution? What advice would you give a single mother to kind of stop from her son ending up in the prison?
That's a good question. I don't know how complicated the answer might sound. I'll try to make it as simple as I can. I would say that it's important for that mom or that dad, right? Because single parents is not just women, it's men too, or guardians, to understand how much environment matters. You can talk to you blue in the face to your kid in the house. You got to recognize that boy, that girl, they got to go out into the world. And that world is filling them up with 80% more information than what you doing on your own. So whatever you can do, you have to armor your kid. You got to talk to him on a real level and prepare them for what those environments is going to be like. Because those paths are taken, not because you a bad parent. Boy, there's a lot. Look, check this out. Single parent household. There's a whole thing that's a part of that. But I would say this. The environment matters, and the environment you setting up for your kid matters. The fact that you feel like if you're working 50 hours, 60 hours a week, right? And you not spending any real quality time with your son, you trying to chase down men, or I'm not blaming you for any of that, because people need partners, people want that in life, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but recognize the environment you're creating for your kid, right? And even in that situation, if you're doing everything you right by your kids, you're trying to buy them things, you're trying to do this, you gotta have an understanding of what that kid is walking through on a daily basis outside of your home, and how much that is influencing your kid. And I add one more thing to it. While we're trying to resolve issues with our children, we need to be thinking about how to resolve the issues with ourselves. You dig? How are you showing up in the world? What's your day-to-day like? You expect your kid just to know some stuff that you didn't know, or maybe you did know and he should just know it at the time? What things are you bringing to the table that may be impacting your kid as well? I don't want women or single parents to think I'm criticizing them, because I believe that the conditions that we in today is the conditions that was handed down to us by our parents, by the folks that came before us, the way society is, and we navigating it the best we can. We trying to figure it out while we out here. Some of us do really well, some of us don't. All kinds of people in between. You dig? But that would be my answer for single moms, single parents. Understand who you are in that equation and how you showing up and the time you spending. That's a valuable life you got in your hands, And that valuable life is walking out into the world and being influenced in all kinds of ways. A lot of this shit starts from when we're very, very young, bro. Like you know what I mean? When we're very young, the things we learning and things we exposed to at a very, very young age influence a lot of who we are as we get older and how we learn, how we have relationships with people. A lot of that is learned by watching, not by talking. That's an old adage, right? That's an old adage, right? Do as I say, not as I do. So the kid gonna do as you do, as we know that. They follow actions more than they follow words. So your words might be late. Your actions already taught him what to be. He can't hear you no more. You know what I'm saying? So, those are just, I don't know how much of that was coherent, but like those are some of the things that I think about when I think about, my baby mama was a single mother, man. And she did good, but she had family support. She had family support, like my family, her family. You know what I'm saying? And she was about her business, about we were in college, got a degree, went to school, did a bunch of stuff, really focused on her kid, didn't focus on a bunch of other stuff, but had support from her family when that did happen. She's one of the ones that made it out. I don't know what the fuck would have happened if she had the support of her family, right? So, this is the environment we in. And not every answer is gonna fit every circumstance we find ourselves in. So I don't know if there's a universal response to it, but I know keep your circle tight, man. Keep your circle positive. Another phrase is what is it? You hang around 9 broke motherfuckers, you're gonna be the 10th. You hang around 9 toxic motherfuckers, you're gonna be the 10th. You hang around 9 petty motherfuckers, you're gonna be the 10th. Hang around 9 motherfuckers that are lazy and just talking about wanting to complain every day, you're gonna be the 10th. And it's the same in the reverse. You hang around 9 rich motherfuckers, you're gonna be the 10th. Now, positive, you're gonna be the 10th, and you get it, right? So keep your circle tight, understand who you are in the equation, understand your baby walking out into an environment that's heavily influencing them. And you have to find ways and tools to figure that out.
It's an old saying my grandmother always told me growing up, show me your company and I'm going to tell you who you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. We're going to end it right there.
All right.
And, thank you, Shawn, for pulling up. And, this is just part 1 of many more conversations like this to come. Thank you.
All right, peace, brother. Peace, y'all.